Hey, next on the Teen Nation, welcome into part 2 of episode 40, featuring my conversations with Gary D'Amato and Guy Boros. Gary D'Amato is a member of the Golf Writers Association of America, and he's in the Wisconsin Golf Hall of Fame. He's been a writer since the early 80s and done some really great things. He has covered every Masters over the last 31 years, so a lot of great stories that you're going to hear from Gary. Guy Boros, as you guys know, is the son of Julius Boros. Guy has had a wonderful career on his own. He's out there playing on the Champions Tour right now. Had a lot of great success early on in his career, and it's fantastic seeing him out there playing on the Champions Tour now. So sit back, relax, let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next hour or so. Before we get started, I want to remind you about our friends over at 2 Under. 2 Under men's performance briefs are the unofficial underwear of the PGA, Ryder Cup, and President's Cup teams, and are sold in over 3,000 golf pro shops and golf specialty retailers nationwide. Ricky Fowler is their global ambassador, and over 50 other PGA, Korn Ferry, and Champions Tour players wear them. Just to mention a few, they are David Toms, Jerry Kelly, Justin Thomas, William McGirt, Scott McCarron, and Chris DeMarco. The Joey Pouch technology provides the ultimate male asset management, delivering maximum comfort from the tee box to the boardroom to the bedroom. Go to 2under.com to check out the bundle specials that offer substantial discounts for being a Next on the Tee listener. That's the number 2, UNDR.com. 2 Under, performance in your pants.
Every January, PGA Tour Superstore pros meet every manufacturer, learn about the latest equipment, log thousands of hours of training, and together hit over 100,000 balls. All so they can get you the perfect fit.
All right, now back with me is Wisconsin Golf Hall of Famer Gary D'Amato. Let me remind you a little bit about Gary's background. He is an officer with the Golf Writers Association of America. He is also a senior writer for Killarney Golf Media and Wisconsin.golf. Started out covering golf for the Racine Journal-Times from 1980 to 1990. From there, went on to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel until 2018, when he went on to Killarney Golf Media. He has covered over 75 major tournaments, including every Masters since 1993. In 2017, he was inducted into the Wisconsin Golf Hall of Fame. He won the Wisconsin Sports Writer of the Year award 3 times. He's written several books, 2 on golf, one titled The Proof is in the Putting with Jerry Cordy, and Erin Hills, host of the 2017 U.S. Open, which was published by Classics of Golf. You can find them both out on Amazon.com, and I couldn't be more honored I get to have Gary back with me this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Gary, thanks for coming back on the show.
Hey, Chris, always a pleasure. And I was listening to your interview with John, and boy, that 1994 U.S. Open brought back memories for me, because that was I was there. That was my 3rd U.S. Open I covered, and he was right. It was hot, and I remember the OJ chase, the white Bronco, and also I apologies to Cookie, but I was one of the guys who walked out of the room after Arnold Palmer's press conference. So sorry about that, John.
So what was it like for you, though? I mean, in that moment when you're in that press conference and the king is kind of giving his farewell to golf, it had to be an emotional moment. I know I've gone back and looked at the video. He was certainly very emotional about it. What was it like being in that room?
Yeah, it was very emotional. Growing up, sort of idolizing Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus and Lee Trevino and guys of that generation. It was an honor to, got to spend a little time with Arnold in interview situations over the years, and that was a special moment. He was emotional. I think a lot of guys in the media room were emotional, because I remember he had a white towel and he kind of put it over his face, and he was came a point where he couldn't get any more words out. And something you rarely see, Chris, in an interview situation like that, is the room gave him a standing ovation, and you rarely see that,
Wow.
in that kind of setting. So yeah, it was emotional, and something I'll never forget.
Gary, before we get into more of the golf news of the day, as you know, Macklemore is one of the sponsors of this show. I was just there early last year, and you were there not that long ago, too. Talk about your trip to Macklemore.
Well, I've been really honored, Chris. Last 2 years that I've covered the Masters, I always drive down to Augusta from Milwaukee, bring my clubs, and you stop and play on the way down or the way back. And So the last 2 years I've been invited to Macklemore on my way home, and you know, it's just it's hard to describe to people what it's like. It's on the top of Lookout Mountain, as you know, and a wonderful golf course that was it was an existing golf course redesigned by Bill Bergen and Reese Jones, um, and now they're building another course, as you know, called the Keep, which I got a tour of it this year. It was mostly grassed and starting to grow in, and I cannot wait. Hopefully, I'll get to play one more time there next spring when the Keep is open and experience that golf course. It's a very special place.
Talk about the 18th hole, because I've had the privilege of playing it a few times now. But each time I get to the tee on 18, it just has a different feel to it than any golf hole I've ever played. I mean, you got the cliff edge all the way down the left and around the back of the green. It almost feels to me like it's suspended in space.
It does. It's an intimidating hole for me. You have to hit it right there off the tee, or your ball's going to go left and go over the ravine. And if you hit one there last week, it's probably still in the air falling. Um, but it is one of the most dramatic holes I've ever seen or played. Certainly that I've ever played. I had the pleasure of playing Old Head in County Cork in Ireland a few years
Oh,
back, and that has one dramatic hole after another. But that 18th hole on the Highlands course at Macklemore is pretty unique. I've not seen anything like it in America, that's for sure.
so now you've touched another soft spot with me, and that's Old Head. I've not played Old Head, but it is at the top of my bucket list. What's it like actually teeing it up there?
Well, it's amazing. I mean, it's on a little peninsula that sticks into the sea in County Cork down on the south end of Ireland. And everything you could imagine from a Great Links test, plus the scenery is just unbeatable. You're several hundred feet above the ocean on multiple holes right along the cliff's edge, and you play around a big lighthouse, which is, if people have seen pictures of or photographs of Old Head, that is always the prominent, feature that's displayed. But um, I've heard stories, and I think they're true, that when the fog rolls in, I heard one time that golfers got actually lost on the course in the fog. It was so thick, and they called the golf shop and asked what to do, and the people in the golf shop said, "Don't move. We'll send someone out to get you," because literally, I mean, you could take few wrong steps and fall off the edge of a cliff. So it is as dramatic a golf course as you'll ever see. It's kind of like Pebble Beach, but with more holes on the ocean and much higher above the ocean.
Did you get good weather when you were there, and what were the winds like? Because I've talked to some guys that have been out there in the 40 to 50 mile an hour winds, where you're actually having to hit it out over the water to get the wind to blow it back onto the fairway.
Yeah, I've played a lot of golf over there, and I had a day at Ballybunion like that in 40-mile-an-hour winds. But Old Head, the day we played it, it was, by Irish standards, a very calm day. It was sunny, breezy, cool, and wind maybe 15 to 20 miles an hour, which is over there, that's considered a very light breeze.
You've got so many wonderful golf courses out in your home state of Wisconsin. I think it kind of goes under the radar a little bit. I think we all know about Whistling Straits and Erin Hills, but talk about some of your other favorite courses around your home state.
Yeah, I think more and more people are finding out about Sand Valley these days. It's a golf resort built by the Kaiser family, the Kaiser brothers, and their father, Michael Kaiser, who everyone knows built Bandon Dunes out on the Oregon coast. Well, they've done a similar thing in the middle of our state in Adams County, right smack dab in the middle of Wisconsin. It was the poorest county in Wisconsin before they started building golf, and the property values have just skyrocketed in that county now. Um, the Kaisers own 15,000 acres. They've built 5 golf courses. They opened the Lido last year, which is a replication of a famous course out on the East Coast that is no longer, that was plowed under during World War II. And this year they opened a course called Sedge Valley, a Tom Doak design that I think it's 6,200 from the tips. So it's people look at the yardage and say, wow, what a short course. But par is 68, and it plays much longer than that. A lot of the par fours are long holes. And it's just a wonderful place to play golf. I mean, the Kaisers have the Midas touch when it comes to building golf, and they've done it again in the middle of our state. They're building a 12-hole course called the Commons. I mean, eventually, I think there's going to be 7 or 8 or 9 courses there, and that has really gone up the bucket people's bucket lists. But there's another course not far from there called Lasonia. Have you ever heard of that one,
I have
Chris?
not. Uh-uh.
Lasonia Links, built by Langford and Moreau, opened about 100 years ago, and it was built with steam shovels. There was no power equipment back then, of course, horses, and it is probably the best inland links course in America. It's $100 golf course. They could probably charge 3 times as much. Everyone who plays that course falls in love with it. So um, Google that one if you get a chance. It's called Lasonia. And then, of course, we have a lot of great private golf in and around Milwaukee with Milwaukee Country Club and Blue Mound, designed by Seth Rayner. So there is a ton of good golf in our state.
You guys just had the Wisconsin State Men's Amateur Championship. It was won by a 39-year-old guy who finally got to achieve his dream. Talk about that and the course it was played on.
Yeah, Garrett Jones played at University of Wisconsin and then turned pro and won a bunch of mini tour events. But as you know, Chris, it's nice to win mini tour events, but if you don't have status on one of the big tours, it doesn't get you very far. And so about 10 or 12 years ago, he applied for amateur reinstatement, got his amateur status back, and has been one of the top players in our state, but never won the state amateur. And this year he played great golf on a very difficult setup called the Legend at Merrill Hills. And one thing the Wisconsin State Golf Association is great at doing is obtaining really, really quality golf courses for its big championships and then setting them up to test the best players in our state. We have a lot of players coming now from Minnesota and Illinois to play in our state amateur because they say that our state association gets great courses and does great course setups. And those guys who come from out of state, they can play in our state amateur as long as they don't play in the corresponding state amateurs in their own states. So it tells you what our state golf association, how good they are at getting courses and setting them up. And Garrett Jones played great golf. 72 holes, he shot even par to win the championship.
And Gary, people may not realize, but Wisconsin is the home to several great players that have played out on both tours, the LPGA and the PGA Tour. You got Steve Strickers from there, Andy North, Jerry Kelly, Dan Forsman, JP Hayes, Melinda Johnson, who won the State Women's Open 4 times for you guys, lives there. Obviously, Sherri Steinhauer, also from there. I could go on and on with the list of great players that originate from Wisconsin. Have you got an opportunity to spend time with all of those guys and gals?
I have, because I've been covering golf a long time in the state. I've known, there's a group of guys that came up together, JP Hayes, Skip Kendall, Steve Stricker, and Jerry Kelly, all roughly the same age within 2 years of each other, grew up playing against each other in junior golf and then amateur golf and college golf. And they all came up together, and I think they all made each other better. And of course, Stricker has emerged as the cream of that crop. He's had a marvelous career. I've known Steve since he was, I don't know, 18 or 19, and he's 57 now. And as a matter of fact, we're talking about collaborating on a book next year about his career. But yeah, it's Sherri Steinhauer, wonderful representation of women's golf and golf in general from our state, from Madison. Johnny Revolta, a name from the past, a Hall of Famer. He spent most of his formative years in our state. So another name is Joyce Mallison, who was Joyce Ziske when she played on the LPGA Tour. She won 5 times in the late 50s, won the Women's Western Open, and then retired at age 25 to start a family. And I think had she not done that, had she continued to play, she might have won 25 or 30 tournaments, and everyone might know her name. So you're right, Chris. A lot of great golfers have come from our state.
And Gary, you've mentioned your time at Augusta National, which is my favorite place on the planet. You've covered every Masters since 1993. I got to ask you, what are some of your favorite memories from being at Augusta National for the last 31 years?
That's a great question because I've seen a lot there. All the Tigers victories, obviously. But my favorite memory, and I like to tell this story, and everyone knows Jack Nicklaus won the '86 Masters at age 46, but not many people remember that 12 years later in 1998 he was 58 and he went into the final round 2 strokes behind the leaders with a very good chance to win the Masters at age 58. And as you know, Chris, media, that's the one tournament I think on earth that media don't get any inside the rope privileges. So we're with all the spectators, and I decided that I wanted to follow Jack, and I got ahead of him. I went up to the third hole, and I stood next to the gallery rope, right next to the green. And Jack, I think, birdied the second hole, if memory serves, and maybe was 2 strokes behind the leaders when he got to the third hole. He missed the green short and right, and his ball was no more than 10 or 12 feet in front of me, directly in front of me. And he stepped up and kind of surveyed the chip, and he chipped in. And I'll never forget, huge roar from the gallery. And he turned toward the gallery, but he was 10 feet from me and looking straight at me. And he shrugged his shoulders and held out his hands like, like, I don't know if he was saying, I can't believe that went in, or maybe he was saying, of course it was going to go in. I'm Jack Nicklaus. I don't know, one of the two. But I had goosebumps. I mean, he was staring into the crowd, but it looked like his eyes were locked on me because I was directly in front of him. And that's a moment I'll never forget. My childhood hero chipping in for birdie in the final round at age 58 and in contention. Pretty special moment.
Yeah, indeed. And I tell you, Gary, it's one of my favorite moments from the Masters as well. And you're right. Not many people remember that. I mean, Jack was on 2 bad hips that he would have replaced not long after that. And
Right.
I'll always cherish Jim Nance as they came on the air for the final round, the start of the final round. And he welcomed everybody to the final round of the Masters and said, "You are not going to believe what you're about to see." And that was Jack doing what he was doing.
Yeah, it was fun, special.
No doubt. Switching gears just a little bit, Gary, you've written a couple of books about the Packers-Bears rivalry. Former Packers kicker Chester Marcol helped you out with one of them, and Chester was the rare kicker selected early in the NFL draft. He was a second-round pick back in 1972 and would go on to be named Rookie of the Year that year. I think he's the only kicker to ever win Rookie of the Year. He was inducted into the Packers Hall of Fame back in 1987. Had some struggles of his own off the field, some demons that he had to wrestle with over the course of his life. But talk about getting to work with him on that book.
Well, yeah, Chester, I had gone up a couple years before we started the book and done I always kind of wondered what happened to him. I had heard the stories about his drug addiction, and he'd kind of fallen off the face of the earth. And I asked my editor if I could track down Chester and do a feature story, and he said, "Yeah, go ahead." So I located him. He was living on the Keweenaw Peninsula at the top of the Michigan's Upper Peninsula, as far north as you can get just about in the United States, in a tiny town. And I drove up. It was about a 6 or 7 hour drive from Milwaukee. I spent some time with Chester, and he unloaded all these stories about his addiction and, drug addiction, cocaine addiction, homeless, suicide attempt. And thank God he failed at that. But so I said during our interview, Chester, you've got a great story. You should think about writing a book. And he said, I'm just not ready for that. I'm just there. I found out later that he was still relapsing at the time. But a couple years later, he called me and said, if you're still interested, I'd like to write a book. So we got together. I spent dozens of hours interviewing him, and I wrote it's a first person story. You know, my words written, but his words spoken. And it's done fairly well, but he just has an amazing story. An immigrant from Poland who spoke no English when he came to America, went to high school in America speaking no English, and 5, 6 years later, he's NFL Rookie of the Year. It's quite a story. Um, in 1980, the season opener, he went into overtime against the Chicago Bears, and Chester caught his own blocked field goal attempt in overtime and ran it in for a touchdown. And it's still regarded as one of the most famous plays in Packers history, and that was 44 years ago now. But Chester's doing well now. He's a drug and alcohol counselor living in Green Bay and helping people who have the same problems that he's had.
Switching over to baseball, and with today being the trade deadline, do you think the Brewers are going to make a strong run at the World Series this year?
You know what? They have a really good lineup. A lot of young kids in the lineup, a lot of speed, really good outfield, a great second baseman in Bryce Terang, who people don't probably know about except baseball insiders. But I think people are going to know about this kid as he, continues, because he is a phenomenal second baseman. They have a good shortstop. Their problem is they have a pretty good bullpen. Starting pitching is the problem, though, Chris. They've had a couple injuries. Their best pitcher, Woodruff, is is out for the year, and then they had a really young, promising pitcher named Robert Gasser who's suffered an arm injury, and he's out for the year. So they just made a trade with the Reds for a pitcher. If their starting pitching holds up, I really think, they've got a chance to make a deep run. But if it doesn't, that's the name of the game, as you know. And we'll see how they do there. They've had the lead in the division all year. Right now, it's about 5 games, and it'll be interesting to see if they can hold on.
Gary, one more before I let you go. And
Sure.
you were the first writer inducted into the Wisconsin Golf Hall of Fame since the 60s when you entered back in 2017. What was it like for you being up on that podium, receiving that level of recognition for all the great things you've done in the game?
Well, honestly, and this isn't false modesty. I really mean this, and believe it. I didn't feel like I deserved it. When I looked out in that room, which was, attended by probably 20 or 25 Hall of Famers who've gone in before me, almost all of them great players in our state. And, you look out there and see all these great players who got their way in, got into the Hall of Fame with their great play. And I got in by writing about them. And I felt uncomfortable that night. I was tremendously honored. And it's an honor that I'll take to my grave. I'm very proud of it. But also, honestly, I just felt, and to this day feel, that I sort of didn't do enough, or I probably shouldn't be in there, but I'm happy and proud that I am. But it was a humbling night. I will say that.
Gary, before I let you go, remind our listeners, how can they stay up to date with all the great things that you continue to do, whether they're following you online or they're doing it on social media?
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. Our website is just wisconsin.golf. It's all you have to plug into the address, your URL, and it'll take you right to our website. Just wrote about a kid from Marquette University who won a big tournament in Ireland, the South of Ireland Open Amateur, which was Darren Clark is on that trophy. Padraig Harrington finished second twice, and this kid from Marquette just won the tournament. So that's our latest story on our website. And also, you can follow me Twitter at Gary D'Amato Golf.
Well, Gary, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your night to come back and be a part of the show and sharing your stories. You're fantastic, my friend. I hope I get this privilege of having you back on and getting more of your insights and stories soon.
Well, it's my privilege, Chris. Thanks so much. And anytime you want me, I'm here for you.
I appreciate that very much. All the best to you and your family, my friend. I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thanks so much, Chris.
See you, Gary.
Bye-bye.
Folks, that is Gary D'Amato. D''Amato is the spelling of his last name. At Gary D'Amato is where you can find him on Twitter. Wisconsin.golf is the website. The guy has just got so many wonderful stories and insights, and he's a pleasure to listen to. This is the second time I've had the privilege of having Gary as part of the show, but each time he's joined now, he has made this segment so much fun to be a part of and so informative. And look, Wisconsin, to me, is way underappreciated for its golf. Great golf courses, great players from there, and Gary has been there to see all of it and cover all of it. Again, he's been to every Masters since '93, and he has been a part of the golf scenery in Wisconsin forever. So, look, if you're looking for a buddies trip or a great place to go play golf, don't pass by Wisconsin. Go out there and look at wisconsin.golf. Read the articles that Gary has put out there. Take a look around at the great golf courses that they've got available. Lasonia Links sounds fantastic. 100 years old? My goodness, how great must that place be? So we already know about Whistling Straits. We know about Erin Hills, but there's a lot more great golf out in the state of Wisconsin than that. So please give Gary a follow. Go out there and check out the website. And then let's take a look at what's around in and around that state, because I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised about the amount of great golf that they have there in the state of Wisconsin. Okay, coming up in the final segment of this week's show is PGA Tour legend Guy Boros. Before I bring Guy into the show, let's talk about our friends over at Squares Golf. And folks, do you sway and you're off balance in your golf swing? You know what? It could be your shoes. A golf shoe needs structure to provide stability and reduce sway. How can you tell if your shoes lack structure and are hurting your game? If you can hold your shoes by the toe and heel and twist it, toss it. Squares was designed for the perfect balance of structure and comfort. Isn't it time you tried Squares? Try the new Speedbolt at squares.com. That's SQAIRZ.com.
Frustrated with your golf game? Imagine playing with total confidence. Join me, LPGA Pro and golf mindset expert Debbie O'Connell, for my Conquer Your Golf Mind Challenge. Bill cut 6 strokes, and Lori is club champion. What's your goal? Click the link or text NEXT to 727-339-0106. Use code NEXT for $20 off. Your tee time for transformation is now. Will you take the shot?
Okay, now back in Next on the Tee with me is Guy Boros. Let me remind you a little bit about Guy's background. He's from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Played his college golf at the University of Iowa and lettered there from 1983 to 1985. He was named All Big Ten twice. He shot a then Iowa record 66 at the 1985 Big Ten Championship. It's still among the best rounds in Iowa history. He turned pro in 1986. Got his first win on the Canadian Tour at the 1989 Atlantic Classic. He won again in 1991 at the British Columbia Open, and that year he won the Canadian Order of Merit. Got his first win on the PGA Tour at the 1996 Greater Vancouver Classic. He also won 3 times on what was then the Buy.com Tour. And as you all know, his father is Hall of Famer Julius Boros, who won 18 times on the PGA Tour, including 3 majors. The 1952 and 1963 U.S. Opens and the 1968 PGA Championship. You can see Guy now playing out on the Champions Tour, and I'm very excited. I get to have him back with me again this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Guy, thanks for coming back on the show.
Oh, Chris, thank you. It's a pleasure to be back.
So, Guy, I want to start by talking about your father for just a minute, because as I mentioned in your intro, he won the PGA Championship in 1968 at the age of 48. Until Phil won the PGA a few years ago, your dad was the oldest player to win a major. A lot of people think it was Jack Nicklaus when he won the 86 Masters, but it was your father, and he continued to play great golf out on tour into his early 50s. Talk about your father's longevity in the game.
Well, I was a little younger when my dad played on tour. I watched a lot on the senior tour. He was just, it was effortless. A lot of people called it effortless. He made it look awful easy, that's for sure. He, he didn't turn pro till he was 30, I believe, 31 maybe. So he kind of got into playing professionally late in life compared to now. But he lasted a long time. I know that. I remember he was 48 when he won the PGA and 68. So that lasted, 50 years, a little over 50 years until Phil was 50 and won it. And he also, I think, he tied for Westchester when he was 55 too. And he got beat by Gene Littler in a playoff. He shot 30 on the back nine, if I remember right, with a hole in one. So he played well into his 60s too. He played very well. So,
Guy, I want to kind of go back to your early days in your college career, because you and your brother both played at Iowa. So how does a kid from Fort Lauderdale end up playing his college golf at Iowa?
Well, I actually had 2 brothers that went there. My dad was great friends with George Forstner, and he ran Amana Refrigeration. And Amana kind of donated a lot of money to the scholarship fund. So him being great friends, George Forstner and my dad being great friends, kind of helped us get scholarships. I think we all played number 1, all Big Ten at one point or another. So, but it was quite a shocker coming from me from South Florida, going to Iowa.
I have to imagine it was.
The first time it got a little chilly, maybe in the 40s or 50s. I think I had my long johns on and my winter coat and everything I had. It was it was a shocker. Other guys wanted to go play golf, and I had the heat on sitting in my dorm room.
As I mentioned also in your intro, you shot 66 in the Big Ten Championship in 1985. At the time, it was the best round in Iowa history. Talk about playing your best golf on the biggest stage at that point in your career.
Yeah, that I remember. That was at I believe it was at Michigan also, and it was a good hard golf course. And I think it was. I remember we used to play 36 one day. I think it was second 18, which is kind of surprising for me. But I played. I never really played much college golf, so. No, I mean amateur golf before I got to college. After that, I did play a few events, but it was fun. It was fun in Iowa. I had a great time. It was tough the first year or so, but after I got kind of the hang of it, found pheasant hunting. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
You won a couple of times out on the Canadian Tour in 1989 and also in 91, then got your first one on the PGA Tour, again, back in Canada at the 96 Vancouver Open. What was it about playing north of the border that always brought out the best in you?
Boy, I don't know. It seemed like I played pretty good out in British Columbia. I don't know if it just being so beautiful out there, and I sure enjoyed Canada too. It's such a beautiful country. I think I drove all the way from Victoria Island, all the way on the West Coast Islands, all the way to PEI, all the way across Canada. So, and I was a little bit younger, but it was very enjoyable.
At that 96 Vancouver Open, which was played at Northview Golf Club, you beat, amongst others, Lee Janzen by a stroke. What do you remember about coming down the stretch and battling it out with Lee?
Yeah, I remember. It's a while ago, but I remember I made bogey 17. I think I had a 2-shot lead. And I remember 18, tough hole, a good, fantastic golf course up there outside Vancouver. And it had 18 was kind of like an island green with rock short right, water short right, and in the back. So it's almost like an island green. I remember I hit, I think, a 7-iron about 10 feet, and I could 2-putt to win. And luckily I got it down in 2. I tapped it up to about an inch and tapped it in. So it was very nice. It was a great week.
Yeah, speaking of that 18th hole, I read an article at the time. You said it looked like the hardest hole you'd ever seen. Was that because of the island green?
Yes, I noticed a lot of water and a lot of rocks around it, and they had the pin tucked up front. So it was, I hit probably the best shot of the tournament. To come and win the tournament like that, it was very rewarding.
I've seen you out playing a bit this year on the Champions Tour, namely at the U.S. Senior Open, where you shot 66 and 69 in the second and fourth rounds to get inside the top 40. How do you feel about the state of your game and about playing there in the Senior Open?
I enjoyed it. That Newport, it's a beautiful spot. Weather was, pretty good, and it's a fantastic golf course. It was a long one, so I remember I hit a lot of 3-woods. That's all I know. But I enjoyed it. I got a new hip a couple years ago, so maybe I'm just I'm starting to play pretty well again. I've got a little distance back and stuff, so that sure helps. And I played pretty good I tried to qualify for the Senior British at Firestone and shot 66, and I think I'm first alternate. I'm not sure I'll get in or not next week.
Speaking of Newport Country Club, your stats show that you drove 300 yards that week. You were tied for 8th in driving accuracy, hitting nearly 86% of the fairways, and you were 12th in putts per greens in regulation at 1.74. So it seems like you've got a lot of good things to build on in your game right now.
It's starting to come together. It's nice to play. It's always well to play in a USGA event. They're so hard to get into, and it's at least I don't get too many opportunities, but it was very enjoyable, and it just made it really enjoyable to play pretty darn well.
And as you mentioned, next up for you guys is the Senior Open Championship. It's being played at Carnoustie. As you stated, your first alternate. Looks like you probably get in. I would think there's a really good chance you make it into that field. Have you played Carnoustie before?
I have. I played there maybe 6 years ago when they had it. I played in maybe 6, 7 British Senior Opens. I tried to qualify. Every time I went over and I qualified, I had a one-time exemption. I've yet to play very well over there, but I think they might have had some overcommitments for the next week, so I may not get in. I hope not. I'll know Friday by 5.
I was talking to Mark Calcavecchia and Tom Patrick earlier this week about the differences in playing links golf versus the style of golf that we play here. Is it a big adjustment for you since it's more of a ground game over there and it's more of an air game here?
It's a little bit. It's I kind of enjoy it actually. The Carnoustie is not so much link style. I don't remember it being so much where you could bring in a bunch of high soft ones, not a whole lot of pot bunkers like you think of. It seemed a little more Americanized, but I've grown up in Florida, and I like to be able to work the ball, hit them low, hit them high, and getting a little older, my chipping's not what it used to be. So I kind of like that putting from 10, 15 yards off the green now.
Looking back at this year's Open Championship, which was played at Royal Troon, have you played Royal Troon when you've gone over there?
I have not. I've never played Troon. I've heard it's fantastic, but I've never played there.
When you think about the Open Championship and the guys that are coming into form, obviously Scottie Scheffler is the odds-on favorite to win it. Rory McIlroy is is in good form. Who are you looking forward to seeing, and who do you expect to be holding the claret jug on Sunday?
Oh, I think it's kind of hard to bet against Scheffler. If he hits it so well, it's unbelievable. And watching him play golf, it throws my theories, right out the window. What my dad kind of taught me is, in a golf swing, you always want great balance and great tempo, and you don't seem to get either one out of him. But he sure hits it awful good. I think it all depends on his putting. If he putts, well, I think he'll probably win the tournament.
Guy, we've obviously seen a lot of turmoil in the professional game over the last couple of years. What are your thoughts about what you're seeing with where the game is at? What do you think? Where do you think we're at a couple of years from now?
It's a tough call. That the tour kind of put itself in a tough spot, and I don't know if there's any easy way out for the PGA Tour. It's tough to compete against the money that Saudis have with the live. So I think they've got to come together and maybe have 10 co-sanctioned events a year. It's going to be a lot of lawsuits and stuff. There's really no easy way out that I see, but have a couple, maybe 10 sanctioned events, and then just keep the tours the way they are. I guess something like that.
Getting back to your being out on the Champions Tour, it's not easy to get out there and to qualify to play. I think a lot of people are under the misconception that you turn 50 years old from playing on the PGA Tour and you can just go out and play on the Champions Tour, but it's not that way, is it?
No, it sure has changed. Guys are so competitive, and when I turned 50, I was still pretty competitive. I played web.com, I think 48, 49. I was still competing out there, so it was a lot easier. I did pretty well. I wasn't fully exempt, but I did okay. I played, I think 15, 16 when I turned 50, and maybe 4 or 5 the last 4 or 5 when I turned 50, and then the next year I played okay. But it's competitive. I got to the finals this year I got to the first stage, went to the finals out in Arizona, where they play the not TPC Phoenix, but the one across the street there, and I think 14 or 15 under, with top 5. So it's not easy. The guys still play pretty good, especially the guys turning 50, 51 that hit it. They still hit it 280, 290, 30 yards past me. So it's a tough go. It's tough to get out there. I sure would have liked to have had a couple of years out there. It'd been nice to see how I could do.
Would you like to get out there and play more often?
Well, it's funny how after I had a new hip, I thought I was probably be done, but I haven't played very well last year, so I haven't played a whole lot. But it's getting kind of easy again, which is it was like me early in my career. Because a guy like me, I never liked to practice or anything. I just go play tournaments, and thank God my dad gave me some natural ability where I didn't have to practice so much. But it's funny how things turn around in your life. Now I enjoy practicing now, and I want to play more. But it might be just because I'm getting a little older, and might not have the opportunity anymore. But I kind of wish I would have had that drive when I was a little younger.
When you were younger, was your father your coach? Could he coach you on what to do? Did you try to emulate his swing? What was it like growing up with him?
Yeah, he was tough to watch, boy. He didn't miss many fairways, didn't miss many shots, and he made it look awful easy. And I remember, I'd play some high school matches or some amateur golf, and he'd ask how I played. I said, "Well, I shot 71, but I made a triple bogey and 2 double bogeys." And he'd look at me and shake his head. He goes, "Boy, I haven't made a triple bogey in 38 years." And and he goes, "How the hell do you make a triple bogey?" I go, "It wasn't that hard. It went out of bounds, missed the green, and 3-putted, triple bogey. It wasn't that hard, Dad." And it was hard for him to fathom, I guess, because I used to shag balls for him when I was little, and I, playing baseball. I used to love baseball, and I thought I'd be diving all around balls and stuff. He'd hit 5-iron. I'd take 1 or 2 steps backwards, maybe 1 or 2 steps to the right and catch them. So it was, now that I think back about it, it was pretty darn impressive.
So was he your coach, though? Could he coach you, or did you want him to coach you, or did you look for somebody else if something was going wrong?
I don't think I ever had my first lesson until I was in my 20s. My dad he was big on the grip and the setup, and he'd give me little pointers every once in a while. He wasn't much into teaching, but he always tried to emphasize to watch better players and to see how they swing and what they do. My dad was real big with pace and the tempo too, I think. he was such a smooth swinger, and I used to swing at it real hard, and he was always trying to get me to slow down a little bit.
When you were growing up, did you travel around a lot with him on tour?
On the senior tour I did, I remember traveling when he had 7 kids. I had 6 brothers and sisters, so there was a bunch of us. But I remember going to Disney World and stuff and tournaments in Florida. And I traveled quite a bit with him when he played the senior tour when I was, 16, 17, 18, which are some of my most favorite times of my life.
Yeah, I got to imagine it had to be kind of cool to be around him and the other players. The Champions Tour, maybe not quite as intense as the PGA Tour. What was it like for you to be around the other players at that time?
Oh, it was fantastic. I still, Jack Nicklaus would call me Little Moose. They called my dad Big Moose. And, listen to Lee Trevino telling dirty stories in the locker room, when he couldn't see me. And so it was, it was fun. I especially enjoyed the time I got to spend with my dad.
When you look back over your career and your time with your father and growing up, what are some of your favorite memories? What do you enjoy looking back on or telling the fellas when you're sitting around spinning stories?
Well, a lot of it, some of it's just like I said with telling the stories when he's, being in the locker room with my dad. And, I just didn't know any different growing up that way. I thought it would be like that forever. And, I never realized what a great golfer my dad was. So he just made it look awful easy. And, I growing up, I always thought, well, people had asked, you want to be as good as your dad? I said, no, I want to be better, until I realized how hard it was and what a great career that he had. But in some of my travels around the world, I've met a lot of people that have always spoken very highly of my dad. So that means a lot to me. Also, people that say that whenever he would come to their part of the town.
Speaking of your travels around the world, I imagine you've played some of the great golf courses that are out there. What are some of your favorite places to play, whether it's here in the States or around the world in other places?
I know that Carnoustie was fantastic. That one. And Wales, the one I played at Lockheed. I can't remember, it was a couple years ago. And I remembered Australia had some really, really good golf courses also. And plus Pebble Beach, Spyglass, I think TPC, Jacksonville, I think that's a fantastic golf course. So I've been lucky to play around a lot of the world and a lot of good golf courses.
So what's in Guy Boros's bag nowadays? What clubs are you playing? What golf ball are you playing?
Yeah, I still got the Titleist Pro V1, playing the gloves and the shoes, and I actually got a new right before I actually went to Newport. I got a new set of PXG irons,
Is that right?
and yeah, I got them like 3 days before I left, and they felt fantastic, and I hit them pretty darn well. And I've got a Callaway driver and a couple Tour Edge utilities and 3-wood.
Wow. So you got kind of a mixed bag going.
I got a mixed bag going. Yeah, if you don't get paid, I just you kind of use what you can get. You know what I mean? I like them. So I found out, well, the clubs do help, but it's usually the swinger, not swingy.
No doubt. And like I mentioned, you hit a ball 300 yards when you were playing in the U.S. Senior Open. Your accuracy was really good. Your putts have been fantastic as well, amongst the tops in the game. Has that always been the strength of your game? Has the distance and the putting been your strength?
When I first started out in college and when I first got on tour, yeah, it's probably one of the longer ones. I'd be one of the shorter ones now, but I hit it pretty straight. I mean, the 300-yard one, that must have had a little help behind me with the wind or downhill or something. But yeah, I usually don't hit it that far, and I putted pretty darn well. I went to the Claw here about 3-4 months ago, and that sure seemed to help on the shorter putt for me. So, like I said, I hit it pretty well. The driver was a couple of misses, but the fairways were wide, hard to miss for me anyway. So, one thing I've learned throughout my golf career is short and crooked is no good. So I'd like to try long and crooked for a little bit, but I know short and crooked is no good.
So as you look out for the rest of the year, do you have plans? Are you planning to play a little bit more, trying to qualify some more for the Champions Tour events, or what do you want to do for the rest of 24?
I think I am going to try a few more just because I'm starting to play a little better. Like I said, I like the PXG irons. They're really, really good for me. So, and I got the new KBS shafts in them. So they seem to fit up pretty well. Like I said, and then if I get the chipping and putting down, I know I can still compete. It's just getting out there, and it's tough playing one day and go flying in and flying out. But a lot of guys still trying to do it. So a lot of good players, and I don't think I'm done yet. I was close, but I think I might be getting a little bit of it back. I hope so anyway.
I hope so too. Before I let you go, let our listeners know, how can they stay up to date with all the things you're doing and follow you, whether it's online or it's on social media?
Yeah, the only social media I got, I think it's Guy_Boros is my Instagram, and the only reason I think I have that is because I follow my kids on it. So, and I'm not on Facebook, any of the social media stuff. I don't try to spend not too much time on there.
Well, Guy, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day to come back and be a part of the show. It's always interesting and fascinating to learn about you and your life and the things that you've done in the past in your college career, doing now. And then it's exciting to know that your game is rounding back into form. I hope you get an opportunity to get over and play in the Senior Open Championship. I'd love to see you competing there.
I hope so. I appreciate it, Chris. Hopefully we get to talk soon.
Absolutely. Guy, take care, my friend. All the best in your family. I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thank you. You too. Good luck.
See you, Guy.
See you, Chris.
All right, my friends, it is time for me to put a bow on this week's edition of Next on the Tee. I want to send out my sincere thanks once again to Tom Patry, John Cook, Gary D'Amato, and Guy Boros for joining me. Scheduled to join me next week and to kick off the month of August, we're going to do it in style with former pro figure skater turned champion drag racer, Dina Parise. Dina has joined us over on the Thursday night tailgate show. It's going to be fantastic to catch up with her. We'll get our regular monthly visit from the confidence doctor, Dr. Bob Winters. LPGA Tour legend Jane Blaylock will also be back as part of the show. And making his Next on the Tee debut is going to be PGA professional Chris Alderucci. So a lot of great stuff on store for you next week. I hope you'll come back and be a part of it with us. Once again, I want to thank our friends over at the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review for hosting this show on their site. You can find Next on the Tee by going to triblive.com and then click on the Sports section tab, and you'll find the most recent episode available for you right there. If you go into Sports and then Podcast Network and then click on the Next on the Tee logo, you're going to find most of the episodes from this season available for you there as well. Folks, I can't thank you enough for continuing to make Next on the Tee a part of your regular golf content. You guys are the greatest supporters in the history of podcasts, and I appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Until next week, hit 'em straight, my friends.